how it was kept for us, reserved for us through the, first of all, oral memorization and passing down of the, what we call the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, the books of the Old Covenant, preserved under the plan of God through the worship of the Jewish people as they learned that there is truly only one God, and him alone we shall worship. As I may have said before, it is God chose the most difficult task then to reveal himself through the person of Jesus. Had he been born in the Roman world to the west, he would have been added to the pantheon of gods. Had he been born in the east, he would have been also able to be added to a manifestation of the one essence of everything. Instead, he was born among the Jewish people, the most difficult group of all, the group that had come to believe and know that there was only one true God, but who had made an idol of monotheism. It's amazing that one can make idols of just about everything, including an idol of our own worship. We are convinced that our style of worship, that our goal of worship, that our method of worship, that our raising hands in worship or shouting in worship or whatever things we attach to worship can become an idol itself, instead of our hearts open to the true and living God. And when Jesus came into this world, they would not accept a man revealing who God is, even through miracles. Miracles accomplish nothing. Of course, the miracles that Jesus did were not the miracles they expected or wanted, nor are they today. Miracles are, we think, miracles of power, and they are, but for the most, not just for the most part, they are really the restoration of God's world as God intended his world to be. And not miracles of just any willy-nilly thing, or especially miracles that fulfill our expectations. Otherwise, Jesus might have flown like Superman over the Sea of Galilee to prove his power and his divinity, but he did not do that. Instead, he expressed humanity. He expressed who we are as people in his miracles, as God intended his people to be, and the tenderness in which he calls to a little girl, get up. It's just an expression of his gentleness. He says, "Come unto me, for my yoke is easy, my burden is light." We're studying adjectives. I know that you have the last week when I was not with you. And by the way, a very blessed new year to all. I think this is the first time we're together in the new year. You looked at adjectives, and so you're aware of them now. And I assume that you've also, at one point or another, seen this passage in John 1. As we noted, it starts off in arche, in hologos, kai hologos, in proston theon, kai theos, in hologos. And the word was divine, the word was God. The word was God. God is placed as an emphasis, describing who the word is. And of course, for the Jews, this would be so difficult to believe, because they had become set in their ways that God could reveal himself. I know that many of you have difficulty with the transmission. I'm quite happy for you to stay with the audio version. The video version of this is being recorded, of course, each time. And as you know, I posted on Moodle. I must apologize that week 9 this week was not posted. I have posted it now, or I have made it. I've been consumed with other things, for good or for bad, or good or worse. I don't know. So you didn't get the written homework, and therefore that reason I'm not requiring that the homework be uploaded until Saturday. I will put some more homework for next week, mainly completing what you already know from chapter 8, and then asking you to learn by this week, and by next Tuesday have all the vocabulary from chapters 1 to 8 down. This verse, just to begin our class again, ein ta phos ta alethenon. Alethenon is the word for true, real, reality, as opposed to what is not reality, which may be wished for, may be expected, but is not conformed to reality. Whereas the true light, phos, the true light, we don't meet this word phos until Greek 2. It's a different declination. We have learned second declension neuter nouns, so we can see that this is a neuter noun. It has the article ta instead of ha or he, so it must be neuter. But we haven't been introduced to this third, what we call third declension. Regardless, we met the word ein, was being, in verses 1 to 5 of John 1, and this is verse 9 of John chapter 1. The true light, the true light was being, which photidze panta anthropon, which enlightens every person. As Paul says in Acts 17, God has placed us in this world that we might seek for him. He can be known, but only the heart that is open to him, that is willing to ask him, willing to let the light shine into our hearts, gets to know him. It is amazing how human beings as the proverb says, we've sought out so many other ways. We seek to get away from the truth. We seek to get away from reality. And I'm not talking about whether we should watch fiction or read fiction. I think we should. I think that fiction can convey truth in a way that just reporting cannot. I myself read fiction to relax. Good fiction, I think, can communicate with our generation today, especially. But what needs to be conveyed almost always is the fact that what we expect is not the way that God may work. He is always a God of surprises. And the true light enlightens or comes from outside and of ourselves. And it's this coming from outside of ourselves that is so difficult for us. We want the light to be understandable within our own context, as I was told one time. I may have mentioned this too. I don't remember what I mentioned, but a member of the majority religion said to me, I am so, who I converted, I am so convinced this is true because it's so simple. I want religion to be simple. So expectation is that religion must be simple, understandable. And I very often don't think of responses until afterwards. I don't know if that's because I'm not in tune with the Holy Spirit the way I should be or what, but I'm not a very quick observer or responder. But afterwards, as I was thinking about it, I realized that the true light, I wouldn't expect the true light to be simple. I would expect the God of creation to be wonderfully complex, beyond any of my wildest imaginations. And the worship of him just boggles my mind. And that's the way it should be. The true light comes from outside, not within my own soul, not even within my own expectations, not even with necessarily within my own understanding of these Old Testament scriptures, or now even the New Testament scriptures, but always with the prayer and expectation that he will speak to us. So let's do that right now. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for this, again, for this wonderful group that you have brought together. And you have given them a desire to know you better and to understand your word better by learning their Greek language. We pray that you will help us as we study together to hear your voice in everything and to learn even from what seem to be mundane and ordinary details, the details of grammar, the details of simple vocabulary. We are simple creatures, wonderfully complex and yet simple creatures. We cannot imagine how great and wonderful you are. And we are so, at the same time, so very thankful that you have illuminated, you have brought light to our darkness. You have shown us what is truly real and not what is fake, not what is phony, not even the what is wrong about our own expectations, our desire to have power over others, our desire to have power over evil for our own purposes, rather than for your purpose. Lord, let us not worship any idol, even the idols of our own success, even the idols of our own wishes for great ministry. We need your true light coming from beyond ourselves into our souls. And for this, we ask for these families represented here, loved ones, friends, those for whom we are concerned and for whom we are responsible, that you would be at work in their hearts and lives, and that you would say to each one, friend, child, little one, get up, walk. Let us walk, Lord, in your light. Let us live in Jesus' name. Amen. So thank you once again. And let's go over some territory. I think I'll break you into groups. We're not having a quiz this morning. Always a little bit different approach to learning. So if you would take, I've sent you a worksheet on WhatsApp, and we have 10 with us right now. I'm going to ask you to work in, let's see, if we have 4 groups, it still works. Take that sheet, and group 1 will go backwards. So group 1, if you take sentence 4, group 2, if you'll take sentence 3, group 3, if you'll take sentence 2, and group 4, if you take sentence 1. So just go backwards. Normally it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go 4, 3, 2, 1. Take that sentence. It shouldn't take you very long. Work on the translation, and in a couple of minutes I'll bring us back and ask you to share your response to those sentences. So oh, there we are. Pause. All right, you've been working on adjectives, and trust that you, even though the homework was not posted, I won't go into the reasons for my negligence, but good students always anticipate what comes next. You also have a schedule, and we're moving right along. I think I'm thankful to Masood for doing that. And you've also gotten into chapter 8, into contractions of alpha omega verbs, which is actually a very simple chapter. So both of these chapters have been simple, other than learning the new vocabulary words, which I'm giving you time to do until next Tuesday, when you should know all the vocabulary words through chapter 8. Going to start chapter 9 on Thursday, I believe, unless I can tell that we're having difficulty with chapters 1 to 8. But the homework, which normally should have been uploaded today, will be due on Saturday. There will be some additional homework, but I'm not asking you to have uploaded homework, especially since it wasn't posted. It wasn't posted exactly. I only said do half of the last half of 7, whatever we haven't completed, and the first half of chapter 8. But I'll have a look at that and verify it. Let's look at the sentences which you had to do. And we had, sorry, just because I turned to a page doesn't mean that you are seeing that page. Oh, group one, sorry, group four. Someone from group four, please translate this sentence. Poi usi kakoi anthropoi kaka erga. Fairly simple sentence.
Sir, group one have to do this sentence. Group one. You told us that group one will do sentence number 4.
That's correct. So thank you.
Yes, sir. We have done, sir.
I knew it was reversed, but I reversed it again. So I came back to original. Yes. Okay. Group one.
Yes, sir.
I guess you're on again. Translation.
Poeusi kakoe anthropoe kaka erga. Bad men do or make bad deeds.
Very good. That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
And again, let me remind you, when you translate a Greek sentence, look for your verb forms first. Later on, we'll add just one or two things to the beginning of that, but the main thing is to look for your verb form, because the verb, as you know, can contain the subject already. I do something, and then the subject is clear if it's a first person, but here we have third person, and we have third person plural, and we have a subject to go with it, kakoi anthropoi. Let me ask a question, and those of you in group one, why would the sentence, why could we not read the sentence evil, evil or bad works, bad works are doing bad men. Now, first of all, because it doesn't make sense, and that is one factor. The grammar has to make sense, and if there are two possibilities, then the one that makes sense is obviously the one, the right translation. But why would, because kaka erga could be also nominative case, the neuter singular and the nominative, sorry, the neuter nominative case and the accusative case have the same endings, the alpha, kaka erga. So why couldn't kaka erga be the subject of the sentence? Evil or good or bad works, apart from the sense of this sentence, which the works don't do bad men or bad people. Why can kaka erga not be the subject? Someone from group one? Someone else?
Sir, because it is clear in our sentence that anthropoi, oi is talking about it's a nominative plural. That's why I think so. In one sentence, in one subject, and anthropo is nominative plural. Therefore, kaka erga cannot be nominative. I think so.
You think correctly. Very good. Yes. We already have a subject in the masculine plural, and it's clearly nominative plural. And you also have a verb that says they're doing something, and we have to have a direct object. They must be, what are they doing? They must be doing something, and that is expressed with bad works. So very correct. There's one other reason, and that is that if the bad works were doing it, they would have to have a singular subject. So it would have to be poi a instead of poi usi. We're missing actually an accent mark here over the u sin to indicate the contraction of poi eo, which is an epsilon omega verb from chapter 6. And by the way, all of the words that you're learning now, all the vocabulary words are used very often in the New Testament. So all of them are very important. What we are learning in the beginner's grammar, all through the beginner's grammar from chapters 1 to 30 are words that are used 50 times or more. For the most part, there are a few exceptions. So all of these vocabulary words, once you have completed Greek 4, you have learned all the words that are used 50 times or more. And Dr. Wesley has asked us to add those that are used between 30 and 50 times. Because if you know those, and there are not that many more, if you know those, then, and you have a book like what's called Kubo, who provides you with the words that are used less than 30 times. So you can easily read any portion of the New Testament once you've completed Greek 4. So it's very important to learn the vocabulary. The next sentence, evil men are evil people, to keep the gender neutral. I have to qualify when I say anthropos is gender neutral, because there are some places where anthropos is used in a masculine, clearly masculine way. And even one reference I found where it refers to the husband. But that's not the normal sense of anthropos. It is referring to people or persons. The Greek has no word for person. It generally uses the word name for person. So to be baptized into the name of Jesus is to be baptized into the person of Jesus, because there's no way of expressing person unless with this word anthropos, for example, or in the case of emphasizing one particular person and an action that's pertaining to that person for some particular reason. And in the case of Jesus, it's obviously a relationship to him. Then the word name is used, onoma. Name to him John, John chapter 1, verse 6. There was a man named to him John. Okay, group 2. I believe he had this sentence. I'm not sure that you had that sentence. Did you have this sentence? Is this the correct one that you had? Ta tekna ta tufla eche kala prosopa. Whichever group had this sentence, would you please give us the translation for it?
Yes, sir. Group 2.
The blind children.
Shabazz, are you answering?
Yes, the blind children have beautiful faces.
The blind children have beautiful faces. Correct.
Yes.
And the beautiful faces have the blind children. That technically would be a possibility, except first of all, it makes no sense for the beautiful faces to have blind children. And secondly, you have the article with the children, the blind children. You learned last time, I'm certain, that there are two ways of expressing the adjective in Greek. One is to have the article, for example, ta tekna ta tufla tekna, to have the adjective here between the article and the noun that it modifies. And the other way is to have it ta tekna ta tufla, to have it separate from the noun that it modifies. But it will always have the same gender and the same ending, nominative, accusative, dative, genitive. It will always agree with the noun that it modifies. Very important to remember that, because there will be times in which the adjective is separated from the noun that it modifies, sometimes by almost a whole verse, by several words. And when that happens, in particular, usually the adjective is being stressed. The children, which I can't think of a particular verse at the moment. The children which are in the house, in the red house, the house where Jesus is, are blind. And then suddenly the adjective reappears, and okay, we have to ask ourselves, which noun is it describing? And if we go back in the verse, we discover that the ending agrees with here. So even if there are a few words separating the noun from the adjective, it's still saying the blind children. But it may be stressing that the fact that they are the children who are blind. And then we have to translate it a little bit differently in English in order to get that stress across. Otherwise, beautiful faces are having blind children. Technically it's possible, but it's the blind children are having beautiful faces. And the article here is almost certainly indicating that this is the subject of the sentence.
Sir, sorry. If we make this sentence, the beautiful faces have the blind children, it could not be passive voice.
Passive voice? No,
Yes, sir.
passive
Indirect.
voice. Passive voice would have a different ending. Passive voice is expressed in the present indicative with omatha, estha,
Omai.
omai,
Yes.
etai,
Yes.
omatha, estha, ontai. So it would have to be
Yes, sir.
omai, etai. It would have to be etai, etai, for the passive voice in the present tense.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're jumping ahead. You've already gotten chapter 9 in your mind. Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Have you learned chapter 9 already?
Yes, sir. In Bible College from Sir Azim.
Ah, okay. Yes. So chapter 9 expresses passive voice. Something happens to the subject, um, but the blind children are being what? Are being made, something has to happen to the subject in the case. The passive voice, the action happens to the subject, and usually a noun such as with the preposition such as hupo, by someone has to be added because we don't know who is actually doing the action. We know
Yes,
that
sir.
something happens to the children in that case, but you're moving ahead chapter 9, which may be confusing for some, so I won't go any further into that. Except to say here, the article, the children, the blind children have beautiful faces. The article is usually used in a case like this to show the subject. And we had something similar in verse 1 when we had kai theos in ho logos, especially where we have two nouns joined by some form of the verb eimi, I am, and in this case, he, she, it was ein. The subject is indicated with the article kai theos ein ho logos. So ho logos is the subject. The word was God. God is placed first for emphasis. The word was God. The word was divine. The word was it's describing the word, the quality of the word. As God himself. He is directed towards God, proston theon, his relationship with God, his face to face. It doesn't say prosopon, so we can't say without a doubt that it means face to face, but it indicates direction towards God. It indicates relationship. So that's then the first verse. This is actually a construction that I'm not sure we find in the New Testament, but it helps us. Group 3, you had this sentence, he ecclesia episte, and go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, its translation is the church is faithful in the Jerusalem.
Okay, the church is faithful in Jerusalem.
Yes.
My only comment on that translation would be, if you have a sense, the faith, the church in Jerusalem is faithful, then you would have piste separated usually and placed toward the end, or placed at the beginning, one or the other, because is faithful is being almost certainly emphasized. So here the construction would be translated, the faithful church is in Jerusalem.
Okay, sir.
That would right now I wouldn't count your translation wrong, but as we by the end of this lesson, and certainly by the end of the week in any quiz, you should recognize it when it's placed together like this, simply the faithful church. Now, is there any difference in meaning? Probably not. between he ecclesia, he piste, and he piste ecclesia, the other way of describing the church, the faithful church. Both of them simply mean the faithful church. The difference in meaning comes when you have some distance between the church and the adjective, the faithful church. The church which is in Jerusalem is faithful, would then he piste would be placed at the end, or he piste okay. One other thing for comment here is that Hierosolima, which is the usual way for spelling Jerusalem when the location of a city is emphasized rather than the meaning of a city. Jerusalem is emphasizing the meaning or the theological in Galatians 4, when Paul talks about the New Jerusalem and the Old Jerusalem, he uses Jerusalem. But when we're talking about the location itself in particular, the church, the faithful church, which is in Jerusalem, then we have this spelling. And Hebrew spellings are usually, except for Moses, there are a few exceptions, but Hebrew words are generally not declined or not declinable. So you don't have in Hierosolima with the dative case, for example, in takes the dative case, you might expect in te Hierosolima and an iota subscript under the alpha because it takes the dative case, but Hebrew words don't decline when they're translated into Greek. Now group 4. I think you had this sentence. Someone from group 4?
Yes, sir. Sir, it is if you have a Christ, you have a promised child.
You have, I didn't understand the last 2 words. You have a promised child?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's not the word child. Would someone want to give us a little better translation?
Sir, if you have the Christ, if you have Christ, you have the faithful promise.
Excellent. Exactly. Bilkul Darmian.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, very well done. You notice that echo needs to have a direct object. So we need something in the accusative case, and we have it. We have the word epangelia, except it's in the accusative case. It's alpha pure because it follows the stem ends in iota. Remember Old MacDonald, E-I-E-I-O, so iota, epsilon, rho, those 3 vowels are consonants. And the stem ends in those, they're alpha pure. So epangelia. But the article stays the same. Tein epangelion. And the adjective, again, the same rule applies. If it is if it stay for adjectives that end like hagia, hagia, holy, would be alpha pure. So then it would be hagion. Tain cannot change. It cannot become tan. Tain, pistain, or tain hagian, holy. The holy promise, but this is the faithful promise. The promise, the faithful, or the faithful promise. One other comment, ton Christon, very correctly you translated, if you have Christ. In that case, Christ is being used as a name, which is particularly the case in the epistles of the New Testament. In the Gospels, generally, Christ is a title or the office as expected by the Jews from the Old Testament. The Old Testament promised the Christ, the Messiah, the anointed one, which in Hebrew is Mashiach, but in Greek translation, to anoint someone is chrio, the verb chrio, I anoint. And the noun then becomes Christos, the anointed one, the chosen one, the one appointed by God. And that's why this Greek translation of the Hebrew Messiah seems so strange and so different, but it's just a matter of two different languages. So you would also be correct if you say, if you have the Christ, if you have the Messiah, which is what I've done actually in my translation here. If you have the Messiah, you have the faithful promise. This would also be correct.
Okay, sir. So the word was faithful.
Yes, pistos. Don't forget the adjective. When you look the adjective up in the lexicon, for example, you can always recognize an adjective because it will have all three case endings, os, and then a, or either eta or alpha for the feminine, and then on for the neuter. There's a couple of exceptions that we have in our vocabulary that we'll look at in just a moment. In fact, we'll look at them now, if I'm not mistaken. I'm still sharing, so let me go down the page. Right, no, I'm not where I want to be. Just going to go down the page here, right, okay. Last time you learned this table, and hopefully you know it now, and you can see what I'm talking about, that a word like good, agathos, agathe, agathon, that the adjective is a very adaptable kind of word in our vocabularies. It will always agree with the noun which it modifies. So if the noun is agape, then the good love will have to be agathe. If the word is child, teknon, then the word will have to be agathon to describe the child as a good child. Even the vocative case, O good man, O agathe anthrope. In the case of the masculine. But notice that the vocative otherwise looks the same as the nominative case. Sorry. And for that reason, I forgot to get my glass of water. For that reason, we begin to leave the vocative off and just have the four cases, because we only have one primary exception with the vocative, and that's with the masculine singular. And Otherwise, the vocative in the plural looks the same as the nominative, and so on. And again, hagios, the word for holy, is similar, except hagios with the stem ending in iota is alpha pure, and so instead of eta, we have alpha. And we notice that works all the way through in the dative case, dative singular, a. Otherwise, of course, in the plurals, there's no difference between them and the eta nouns. So we just need to remember that alpha pure adjectives will be alpha pure, but the article won't change. Now let's do just a little bit of practice and use the same groups. We just had group 1, so I'll take group 4 again. Someone from group 4, you translate this sentence. Hagioi angeloi legusin tois dikaios anthropois. Someone from group, did I say group 4? We'll take group 4. Don't know what I said. We'll take group 4. Someone from group 4? Don't be afraid to make a mistake. Not getting your response. Someone unmute, group 4, group 3. Remember that I also am looking to see who participates. Participation is an important part of your marks. We may have lost 1 or 2 because of connections. Group 2, someone from group 2, anyone. Group 2, 1, groups 1 to 4.
Sir,
Yes, Shazib?
sir, the holy angels are speaking to the sorry sir, I don't know the meaning of dikoios, but I know I can translate the other sentence.
Oh, you're doing very
yes,
well.
yes, the sorry, not coming the holy angels, holy angels are speaking the
And the word
men.
dikaios is righteous.
Yeah, the righteous man.
Okay, they're speaking to the righteous men. Lego is one of those words that just cries out for a dative case. It wants to know to whom whatever is being spoken is being spoken. Who are you talking to? You're talking to the righteous men or the righteous people. I would accept people, except for we have the word laos, and so I prefer if you just in this case use men, and not wanting to cause any consternation among our lady students. Again, anthropos is generally a gender neutral word. Persons is fine, better than people, because we have the word Laos for people. Now, a few things I need to point out. The adjective can be used by itself as a noun. My wisdom is bad. The wisdom of God is holy. Now, this is not an example. It's the wisdom of God is holy, not an example of what I'm talking about. But the translation, but this is an example of how the adjective is separated from the noun here for the sake of emphasis. The wisdom of God is holy. And the only reason that here Hagia is separated from Sophia, holy wisdom, is that it is emphasizing the holiness of God's wisdom. Now, here is the verse that I was going to use, 1 Corinthians 15:35. We have the future tense of Lego, which doesn't look anything like Lego, I realize, but that's especially with verbs that are used very commonly in any language. Again, I've said this before, in any language, words that are used, verbs in particular, that are used very, very often, very commonly, are usually irregular for whatever reason. I'll let linguists tell us why, because I'm not sure why. But a certain one, tis, anyone will say, future tense. How? And here our brother brought out that we have the passive voice, and we do. The action is happening to the subjects who happen to be hoi nekroi. How are the dead raised? The action, when we have the passive voice, and we'll have it next week, kind of. We actually don't really meet the passive voice in full until Greek 4, but the fourth semester. But we do touch on it a little bit, and already beginning next week in chapter 9. How are the dead raised? Is how this sentence reads. Post means how, and then are raised, passive voice. The action is happening to the subject. And we notice hoi nekroi. We know the word nekros from our vocabulary in chapter 7. What is important here is to notice that an adjective can suddenly be used by itself as a noun. So here we have dead people. How, in English, we say, how are the dead raised? And Paul is answering an objection. How on earth can dead people be made alive? And then he says, you foolish people, you don't understand spiritual reality. They're saying, we don't observe dead people being raised from the dead, therefore dead people can't be raised from the dead. If we haven't seen it happen, then it can't happen, which of course is leaving God out of the equation. And it's never smart to leave God out of any equation, because he changes every equation. I'm not talking about mathematics here. But someone will say, someone will say, how are the dead raised? And notice hoi nekroi used to describe the dead people. And I don't have a word anthropoi, I just have hoi nekroi. It's very common in the New Testament, and important that we notice right now that adjectives can be used by themselves and become nouns. We notice that here in Leviticus chapter 22, verses 2 and 3, and LXX is are Roman numerals. If you know Latin, and most of you probably have not had Latin, why would you? Sanskrit, perhaps, but not Latin. But if you are raised in the West, as I was, it's very, or it used to be very common, not anymore, for people to learn Latin because it's the basis. Latin and Greek are the basis of our Western languages, particularly English is about 1/2 Latin, 1/2 Greek, and a bit of other words. From Arabic, for example, we have several words, and from other languages, from the biblical language, from Hebrew as well. But here in Leviticus, this means 70, and it's simply the abbreviation for what we call the Septuagint. Septuagint was the Bible that the apostles used, that Jesus also used in the 1st century. It had been translated by Jewish scholars in the 2 centuries prior to the birth of Christ, and then became used by the church in the 1st century as its translation of the Old Testament. Most Christians, particularly Gentile Christians, those who weren't Jewish, would not be able to read or understand the Hebrew of the Old Testament, or a few portions of the Old Testament are written in Aramaic, the language of Syria, but or the language of their captivity. But most people did not understand Hebrew. Even most Jews didn't understand Hebrew unless they were scholars. But they did understand translation of the Old Testament. So here I've taken that translation that Jesus and the apostles used in the Greek language. It's not necessarily a very good translation, especially the first 5 books, Genesis to Deuteronomy, were done much more carefully than some of the others, but it's very illuminating for our understanding of the New Testament, because for the most part, the apostles use it to quote the Old Testament into Greek. But notice here, if we go down in verse 3, we're talking about cleanliness and how we should not approach God in an unclean manner. Notice the subjunctive. No, sorry, you're a Greek 1. You wouldn't know the subjunctive. So let's forget that. But pros ta hagia, to pros, the holy things. Ta hagia is here in the accusative case, neuter word, because it's describing actually a word that's not present, but in other words, the neuter plural is used very commonly for things, just in general. Is anyone who approaches erchomai, beginning is the verb approach to the holy things, ta hagia, neuter plural, no noun, just the adjective, and they're using this word as a noun. So I primarily picked this one out simply to show another example, very common in the Greek of the Old Testament, the Greek of the New Testament, to use an adjective also as a noun, holy things. Also, I have here in red, I am the Lord your God. Ego, kurios, ho, theos, humon. Humon means your, genitive plural. That should look familiar to you. The genitive plural ending. We haven't learned you plural yet, but that's this form. Your God, the God of you. I am the Lord, Kyrios ho theos. I am God, your Lord. I am the Lord your God. For reasons I won't go into, more correct translation would be, I'm the Lord your God. Ego is the word for I, and we don't have a me here because Greek often leaves off a me. I am. It just leaves it off. It's understood. When we do have ego, it is emphasized. I am the Lord your God. I myself am the Lord your God. These are some important things. And also I wanted to point out in our vocabulary list, I believe there's also, no, that will be in chapter 9. Okay, so let's go, chapter 8, sorry. Let's go there. You had that also for this time. And last time you learned the contractions of the alpha omega verbs. So I'm just going over material that you had already. Horao is the dictionary form. This is not what you will find in the New Testament. This is what you will find in the dictionary, in the lexicon, because it needs to tell us that this alpha is in the stem, hora. Then the endings are added. We know the endings so far. The ones we have are the present tense, o, es, a, omen, ete, usi. But in the case of an alpha omega verb, in contrast to an epsilon omega verb, that's what we call these alpha, the verbs that whose stem ends in alpha. The contractions are different. And here it becomes omega with, again, the circumflex accent to show that there has been a contraction. Ace becomes os with the iota underneath. A becomes a with a contraction with the iota underneath. The omen becomes omen. And it's important that we learn our vocabulary because in the future, we will also have a lengthening from omen to omen, from omicron to omega for other reasons. So learn your vocabulary well. These words that are used so often in the New Testament in particular. And you notice that we have many more changes when alpha omega verbs contract than we did with epsilon omega verbs, where we only had these two, we and you plural, that changed their spelling in the contraction. But with alpha omega verbs, we just have in every case some kind of difference, except here in the case of the first person singular. Otherwise, I think, yes, we have a change in every other conjugation in every other form. I, you, he, she, it, we, you, and they. Again, if you translate with a simple present, that's fine. I see, you see, he, she, it sees, we see, you see, they see, that's okay. I like, again, to emphasize the usual, not always, but usual progressive sense of the present tense in Greek. So last time I assume that you learned these one that in the textbook is pointed out that we need in our vocabulary, we need to keep in mind is the verb zao, because it does not conjugate as a normal alpha omega verb would. In fact, the author of our textbook, Dr. McIver, says that it is not a true alpha omega verb. It's simply an irregular verb. So I am living, the contraction, which would normally be is zo. I would expect zos if I had an alpha omega verb, but in fact, it's irregular. And instead of zos, instead of this, which I would normally have you live or you are living, we have zes. So not this, but this. Again, I would expect this with the normal rules of contraction for he, she, it lives, or he, she, it is living. But in fact, I don't. I have ze, iota subscript here. We are living, zomen, zeta. I would expect this with the alpha, but I don't get it. I get zeta. And they are living zosin. So this is a verb that you need to pay special attention to, because it is a very common one in the New Testament. I live, you live, he, she, it lives, we live, you live, they live, or the present continuous as it's translated here. So he mentions it in chapter 8, and you need to make sure that you remember that and that you memorize this conjugation. Zo, se, zomen, zeta, zosin. In one of the most famous passages in the New Testament, you'll notice that the Apostle Paul uses it. Now, no longer I am living, zo. In fact, he places zo first, and it is no longer I who lives. Uketi means no longer. Notice u, no longer I myself. But now, de is living in me, Christ, Christos. Christ is living in me. Now the life which I now live in the flesh, in sarki. He uses the word flesh sometimes for simply in the body. The word that the life that I'm now living, I live, zo, again, in the body. I live by faith, in piste. In can sometimes be used in an instrumental way. And you'll remember that we had mentioned that little debate in the New Testament in hudati, in water or by water. Did John baptize in water, or did John baptize by using water? In can be instrumental. It can mean the instrument that is used rather than the sphere or the place. So Baptist will say John baptized in water, and a Presbyterian would say, and I go to a Presbyterian church, even though I'm not a very convinced Presbyterian, but would say he baptizes by water. So it doesn't matter how much water. Although I find it very interesting in John 3, it says that John was baptizing in Salem because there was much water there. But again, that really doesn't end the debate. Whether that debate is important, I will leave to you to decide. I'm not sure that it is a vital issue. But by faith, certainly here, or through faith, I live. faith in the Son of God who loved, we have participles here. So this is, pay special attention to the vocabulary otherwise in chapter 8. And notice that now we begin to have verbs that are constructed of verbs that we know already with prepositions added. So luo means loose, apoluo, loose away, or I release, dismissed, send away. Sometimes, usually it makes sense. Now, there will be times when they add a preposition to a verb to make a new verb, and it doesn't make sense. So don't assume that because you know the preposition and you know the verb that you can automatically put the two together and come up with the answer. It isn't quite that simple. But stello basically means a place, but apostello, I send away. I send. And of course, we have the word apostle from this word apostello. So an apostle is someone who is sent away, sent on a message. An apostle, a messenger. Even an ambassador, if it's an apostle of a very important person. Ego, or ego, I. And then we have this little preposition sun that we are learning now. It takes the dative case. Sun means with. And it's a very important preposition in the New Testament. And I want to take just an example of it, how it's used in Ephesians 2, 1-10 and 2, 11-22. We have, first of all, Christian salvation. And as a result of Christian salvation, what that leads to is Christian unity. For Paul, it was hugely important that the Christian faith be experienced and then that it be lived out. If it is experienced, then it will be lived out. The problem is we are dead because of sin. And this is an issue we can hardly overcome. Dead people can't make themselves alive. We cannot save ourselves. We're always looking for solutions to the human dilemma, human problems, but we're always looking in the wrong place. We're looking for someone to do what we think we need. We're looking for a Superman to fly over the Sea of Galilee and to do things for us. In other words, an assistant for our purposes. God will never be an assistant to any human being. He does not come as an assistant. He comes to take charge. He comes to take control. He will not come into a life of anyone who tries to use him for their own purposes. And so many prayers are made, of course, in an attempt to use him. I realize our time is coming to a close. I just want to point out how important it is to learn our vocabulary words. Here we have from V8, vocabulary 8, the word sun, made alive, raised up, seated together with him. So how are we saved? With this little word sun with Christ, made alive with Christ, raised up with Christ, seated together with Christ. And the consequence is a new creation in Christ. Which leads to the problem, the separation between Jew and Gentile, disunity in the church, where Jesus had said, this is the way all people will know that you're my disciples. They will know the reality of the gospel because you have love one for another. And again, the word sun. Now notice it's spelled with a mu, sum. with fellow citizens in God's new household. Sum politai, politics. We have the word politics here. We have the word sun. It's sometimes spelled with a mu instead of a nu, especially when it's placed together with another word, but it's still our little word sun. Notice how important it is in Ephesians chapter 2. Used over and over again, especially combined with another noun or another verb. Joined together, built together, fellow citizens together. So with this word sun, together, sun Christo, together with Christ. Sun with the dative case, we're made alive and together with one another. As a result, we overcome the greatest problem that we face and that destroys the testimony of the church, and that is disunity. We must be united together first around the solution. If we have a different solution, if we believe that people only need help, they only need guidance, they only need some assistance along the way of their own purposes, for their own purposes, then we have a very different view of salvation than God does. God says, you are helpless sinners, dead in sins, and you need a Savior who makes you alive first. And together with him, you start a new life. And the first example of that is seeking out and looking for and striving towards a God-centered unity and love for one another that is so often absent from the church and destroys our testimony. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And I am posting homework and Moodle quizzes, catching up. Week 9 is now open and visible in Moodle, and I'll be posting the homework, which again, you have until Saturday to post the homework for this week. There will be a little bit of homework for Thursday, which I will post separately, and then the homework for next week will again, I think the homework is 15, 16, and 17, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm giving you time to complete the assignments. So if someone has a question, they can stay behind. Otherwise, you are free to go. And thank you.